Welcome in. It is time for the wire. I cannot believe it. Week 1 is in the books. It is wrapping up tonight with Buffalo versus the Jets, and it was not what you wanted. I felt like I missed everything. As always, Mike Burland is here with me. How's it going, Mike?
Yeah, it's going well. It was a pretty rough week, like you said. I think there was right around 58, 59 total touchdowns, and last year there was like 70 plus. The year before there was 80 plus. So it was definitely a weird week 1. But week ones are always a little strange, right? So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, and of course we have injuries stacking up, so that's why we're here more often than not. Shouldn't be surprised, but guess I am. J.K. Dobbins had an Achilles go 6 to 8 months, getting surgery, all that good stuff. Man, it's tough. I feel like he is just always getting hurt, and not calling him injury prone, but man, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's like kind of career ender almost. I mean, just back to back. You know, we haven't seen a full year of healthy except his rookie year, but he didn't play the whole year. It's tough. It's really, really tough for J.K. That's why these running backs try to get paid, perfect example.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely makes sense. I mean, even then, we had Deion Jackson had a really rough day, so they tried to have Evan Hull come in. He gets hurt, and Jackson just didn't get any better. It was really rough. I do think part of that was the defense he was going up against. And today, got news, Austin Eckler is dealing with an ankle issue. Of course, that just keep piling on, Chargers. This is the way to do it. Just how it goes. But, already looks like we got some people in the chat here. Let's see.
And it's me, voice of God, Steve. How's it going?
Terrifying.
So just as a reminder, from the same way we did it last year, just if you guys have questions, throw them in the chat, and we will get to them when we get to that position. But we're going through position by position, starting with the QBs.
Perfect. Okay. So, wide receivers also getting hurt. Deontay Johnson, Jacoby Myers. Johnson, that hamstring is something that I'm a little more nervous about. I would expect him to probably miss at least 2 weeks, but it looks rough. And then Myers got hit, and I was terrified about it. Man, he did the full parum where he just it was scary. I don't like seeing that kind of a hit, and when people just stop movement completely, it's always terrifying. And Tyler Lockett also getting a concussion, so it's adding up quickly.
And and the nature of concussions now, ever since the Tua stuff last year, is you're basically going to miss a week, at least. So I expect both those guys probably to be out. We'll see, but especially Myers, that was a pretty bad one. And then Deontay did not look good. Instantly grabbed his hamstring and was just out. There was no question. So really, really tough.
All right, so we'll get to what the people actually want. We'll start off with quarterback because, why not? This is where I stream. This is where most people stream if they are doing that kind of idea. And a lot of names at the top of the list okay, week 1. I know, it's weird. Top of the list, Tua Tagovailoa had a massive day against the Chargers. No surprise there. Mac Jones, Jordan Love, Anthony Richardson, Deshaun Watson. Wow, these are a lot of names that I'm not expecting to see at the top of the list for fantasy this week. But wow, it finally gets to Herbert at 6. That's one of the ones I actually have in the top 10. But we'll start off with the quarterback that I think really surprised me. I didn't expect him to bounce back that quickly, and it's Brock Purdy. He is currently 24.5% rostered, and I was nervous, man. Seeing him have that elbow surgery, I was worried about it, and again, only had a handful of games, made me nervous. But week 1 versus a good defense in the Steelers, they expect a lot out of him, and he put up 16.8 fantasy points. So going 19 for 29, 220 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Again, he gets the Rams, who actually look pretty good. I think that shocked a lot of people, including me. I was super surprised at how impressive they were, but we'll see how this ends up going. That's kind of where I would lean first. Are there some people you're looking at, Mike?
Yeah, I like Purdy. He keeps checking the boxes like, he's a rookie or hasn't played a good defense, and check that box. He went up against the Steelers and looked good. So yeah, it's tough with quarterbacks because it's week 2. You're generally just going to roll with the guy you drafted. Bye weeks haven't started yet, but a couple guys out there. Jordan Love
looked pretty good.
Yeah,
coming in for Rodgers looked awesome.
Yeah, is it one of those situations where the Packers did it again and they just moved from Hall of Famer to Hall of Famer? I know it's way too early. 250 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did that without Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs playing like 50% of the snaps. So plays the Falcons in week 2. We don't really know what the Falcons are. I think their defense has improved, but they played Bryce Young his first start, so it's hard to tell how good the Falcons are or not. So I think he's a solid stash if you want to stash another quarterback and see how he does. And then Jared Goff is under that 50% threshold that we go by, and plays the Seahawks in week 2. If you need a starter for whatever reason, they just saw let Stafford throw for over 300 yards against them. No touchdowns, but still throwing for over, I think, 330 yards. So he's kind of a matchup-based player, in my opinion. Better at home, Goff is, and if he gets a good matchup, I think he can put up a solid week.
Yeah, and since I touched on clearly Brock Purdy, I'm also going to kind of throw out the name Mac Jones because again he was impressive. I was very impressed for a defense or an offense that I didn't think really had a whole lot outside of Stevenson, but he seems to put something together.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. Yeah, I mean, again, you're probably going to roll with the guy you drafted, but maybe you have Daniel Jones and you don't feel super comfortable after seeing what he did. He plays the Cardinals this week, but he has a tough schedule after this week. The Giants in general have a tough schedule, so after this Cardinals game. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is also due to the fact that, per usual, they made it to the playoffs, so their schedule is going to be tougher than it was last year. But all right, we'll move into the next position. It's the RB. Like we talked about, Dobbins is out. So of the group, that's probably Justice Hill that I would be looking at. But again, I'm more thinking that they're going to sign somebody. Saw that they promoted Gordon, not meaning a whole lot there, unfortunately. Do you like Hill or do you prefer Edwards?
Man, it's really tough. If you play in a fab system, the free agent bidding, don't spend too much don't overreact, especially if you had Dobbins, because I do think they're a prime candidate for like a Kareem Hunt or Fournette. I mean, Gus Edwards kind of was the starter when Dobbins went down, but Justice Hill got the touchdown. So this one's tough. I think it's just going to be more of a committee. So I'd probably lean Gus Edwards, but I'm not going to – they're not even my number one targets for running backs, even if I have Dobbins.
No, but we'll start with the guy that I think is going to be the number one for everybody, and it's Tyler Algier. Everyone thought there was going to be a lot because Bijan Robinson is just absolutely phenomenal as a talent. And it was almost a 50-50 split with him and Bijan. So it's just crazy. He actually had more carries, saw 3 targets. Bijan clearly had that whole area under control, and he put up 24.4 fantasy points with 2 rushing touchdowns. The big thing for him, though, is really the fact that he saw the goal line work. And so that was the thing that was kind of more surprising. And I think if they're going to only throw it 18 times, you're going to want the running backs in Atlanta. It does. I don't think it really matters who they're going up against.
I have a question.
Oh, geez.
God here. How much do you think the Cordarrelle Patterson not playing factored into that split?
That's a good question. I wonder if that actually. I would think it would end up actually hurting more Bijan based on how much he was being used in the passing game. But it's interesting. Bijan saw all the targets. He was the target leader on the team. So
yeah, I thought they were going to use. Patterson is more of like they listed him that Joker role of just like a hybrid, more of a hybrid receiver, like as he is a hybrid receiver running back rather than just a pure runner. So I don't think it will affect it, to be honest. Like. I just think Algier, I can't believe Algier is under 50%. That's even just as a handcuff, but now he has standalone value, So, I think it's crazy that Algier is under 50% even before this week 1 performance.
Well, and again, Steve brings it up because it is important, but that is the goal line is kind of what Patterson was known for last year. So if that's going to be the case, it might end up being interesting to see what it's like when he's back, but it's hard not to just trust that Algier is going to get the work because he scored. I mean, he went in there twice and got him. So it's just crazy. And speaking of guys that are surprising, Kenneth Gainwell, 21.7% rostered. He gets the Vikings, who still can't do anything on defense, it seems like. And it only took him 3 years. It took him 3 years to finally become the back that everybody thought he was going to be. All the Kenny G truthers are out here screaming their heads off. He played 41 of the 66 snaps. Yeah, of course. Steve's up here always saying, absolutely loved it. He ran around on 16 of the 41 snaps for 39%. And he led in carries. He had 14 of them, which is just crazy. He had the best YBC for the running back group, 3.9. Granted, it only amounted to 54 yards, but still, he also had 4 targets, and he caught them all for an additional 20 yards. Like, it ended up being a pretty solid day in a game that, granted, they kind of had a control of the whole time. So it'd be interesting to see how much that changes his role.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even just the carries, like you said, the snaps, 39 to Swift 17. I do think, I'm not 100% convinced that, like, this is what DeAndre Swift is now, and, like, he's just, like, nothing. So we'll see. But Sirianni was kind of, and the Eagles were just kind of telling us, like, if you watched our 32 and 32 of the Eagles, they were kind of telling us all offseason or preseason that, Gainwell's the guy, and we mentioned it. Like,
he was wearing the shirt, man. He was wearing the Gainwell shirt.
Yeah, so at least for now.
Penny a healthy scratch, too.
Yeah, that was the other big thing is when I saw that, I thought Swift would actually get a little bit of a bump. Nope. They just straight were like, don't care. Good luck.
Yeah.
But next guy, kind of interesting to kind of touch on, Roschon Johnson, 21.7% rostered. Again, led the actually, I think a lot of it was just due to the fact that they were chasing. And so he was kind of the third down, passing down back. But ended up leading the running back room in snaps with 29. He did see the most targets of the running backs with 7, which is actually tied because he was pretty much tied with everybody who saw any kind of targets. And with Mooney and Kmet, like, that's just crazy that he was targeted that many times. But it really just felt like Fields was under siege the entire game, which kudos to the Packers, because that was impressive. He got 6 of 7 targets for 35 yards. It was a good showing for the rookie to come in and have that much success.
Yeah, this backfield's kind of like
a mess.
It is a mess. Like it seemed like it was Khalil Herbert like that first drive, and then it was just like it was Foreman, it was Roschon. The only consistent thing was Roschon was like that third down, the obvious passing down back. I think he did get a lot of his carries when the game was out of hand, but I like Roschon as
he looked good with the carries that he got, though. I mean, that was the kind of positive takeaway from that. So, and we'll go into another surprising name, Kyron Williams. Welcome. Exactly. Welcome, Kyron. Because Akers, they just said, no, we're going to throw you in the trash. We don't trust you at all.
I don't know if I've ever seen a performance of 22 carries and 29 yards. You see the 10 for 15 every now and then. 22 carries for 29 yards. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Yeah, I think that might be the worst performance on somebody who's had 20 plus carries. I would not be surprised. Yeah. Like that, the fact that it was barely over a yard per carry just was mind blowing to me.
Yep. Yeah, I like. Oh, I don't necessarily like Kyron, but seems like he's going to be the number one back for the Rams. I think he had over almost doubled the amount of snaps that Akers had. 50, like it was like 55 to 28 or something like that. So
insane amount, an insane amount of him being on the field. But it was just atrocious. The fact that the 22 for 29 for Akers, I really just think put the nail in the coffin for him, because they can't. I mean, there's no reason to. You saw what he had, Williams, and he's done a great job. And he's only 10.3% rostered. I do not love him this week, though. I wish I could say, hey, go out and get him and play him, but it's a 49ers who just absolutely destroyed the Steelers. And while the Rams actually kind of just surprised everybody and did a very good job this week, I'm not suggesting that you should go out and get Williams this week of all the players. But Mike, do you have any names that I'm missing here that you think, well, you want to touch on?
Yeah, I'll throw out a few. Obviously, I like the Algier and Gainwell are the top two by far. But Jalen Warren is still under that 50% threshold. So I'll keep saying his name until he gets over, unless he drops after this week, after that performance. But he was basically in a 50-50 split, almost a 50-50 split with Najee. I mean, in terms of their snaps played, and 33 for Najee, 25.
Harris did go out with an injury for a little bit, which might have helped that. But yeah, I do think that it is definitely worth noting that Jalen Warren saw a pretty good amount of usage in that game.
Yeah, and he, he had the third down pass catching part. So, he might have some standalone value. I'd like to see the Steelers offense not playing maybe the best defense in the NFL and just see what it's like. But so, that's a name to think about. A sneaky one is Zach Moss from the Colts, just because you mentioned it. Evan Hall is going to miss time. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is not back till week 5. And Deion Jackson was like atrocious. Atrocious. They put in Jake Funk because Deion was so bad. So I think Zach Moss, who was kind of like, talking about maybe he plays week 1. Obviously, he didn't. I think he comes back and is just the starter. He was pretty decent the last 4 weeks of 2022. He's a top 24 running back. So you could get a 3-week starter there with Zach Moss, and he's like under 10% rostered, I think. And then Joshua Kelly, obviously a late add here not even with the Eckler injury, but he had 16 carries compared to Eckler.
He looked good with them.
He looked good. And this Kellen Moore offense, just think about where he came from. He came from Dallas. They supported 2 running backs with Pollard and Zeke, and they ran the ball a lot. Like, I think a lot of people are thinking, the Chargers are going to, Herbert's going to throw for 6,000 yards. And no, I think they're going to be a lot more balanced. That's kind of what they want to do. And so I think Kelly, especially with Eckler now with this ankle injury, like a lot of value there. So I would someone I would target, and Sean Tucker, not to pick up, a name to keep an eye on, because I think Rachaad White just looked horrendous as well for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Sean Tucker, he's their RB2, and I think Tucker could be better than White. So just keep that in mind.
Aegis Wonder asks, Sudo, do I pick up Moss over Hill and drop? I'm going to say that's probably Tucker, and the answer for me is yes.
Yeah.
Just because, again, Hill is fine, but I do think that Moss is going to be in a much better situation. You're going to be able to trust that a lot more. I've never truly trusted a Baltimore running back. I was all in on Dobbins, and then he gets hurt, which kind of was unfortunate. But man, I really thought he had all the opportunity in the world to just have his best week against that ideal matchup, and it didn't show up like you wanted it to.
I will say, if you're like stacked at running back and you don't need anything for sure for the next couple of weeks, because once Jonathan Taylor comes back in week 5, I think Moss is kind of worthless. So that's the only, if you think you're going to need a running back start over the next 3 weeks, then definitely Moss. But if you don't, then I maybe just hold on to see what Hill is, or even Tucker, I believe that is.
So, all right, we'll move into wide receivers. I'm going to throw these names out here because it's kind of just ones that I want you guys to know of. Again, talked about it in the 32 teams in 32 days. Calvin Austin with Deontay Johnson played the slot, came in almost directly, had some success. I do think that he is one of the more talents. He is the guy who's supposed to be taking the top off, but if Johnson's out, he can play that slot role and has the ability to do so very well. And again, with Jacoby Myers, if he is dropped, that's somebody else you definitely want to have. He had so much success with Adams being covered by Surtain in that first game that it was very easily Myers just seeing all the targets. And with him likely or potentially being out this week, I probably shouldn't say likely because it is concussions and everybody goes through them differently. But you're probably going to look at Hunter Renfrow here. His name is coming back up, I guess. So, and then Josh Downs as another guy who's just, I'm interested in kind of watching and keeping an eye on because he did see targets early before Pittman decided that he was going to show up in the second half, and Richardson actually became very successful with that. But We'll go to the guy that I absolutely loved all offseason. I think the site loved him as well. Romeo Dobbs, 19% rostered, gets the Falcons, who are a solid defense. But man, with him even being the injury, he played 52.7%, was out for 29 snaps. He ran a route on 20 of them, and he saw 5 targets. Like that, the fact that it was immediately a 20% target share was awesome for just that small portion. 4 or 5, 26 yards, and had both touchdowns. Like, granted, I understand Reed was there and Watson was out, but I still think that his role is just going to be so defined that he's going to be the target leader for this team outside of Aaron Jones, who clearly far and away the leader for any kind of pass catching. So,
yeah, I like Dobbs. I mean, the drumbeat was there all preseason too. Like Dobbs is the guy, and Dobbs is the guy. And I was trying to tell people, like, I don't think it's Christian Watson. I think it's Dobbs. And yeah, just pretty crazy production with a 50% snap percentage. So definitely someone I've drafted him. So definitely someone you guys should be picking up.
Well, I want to just touch on that real quick too, because you mentioned already Aaron Jones having the hamstring injury. So if he misses any kind of time at all, I don't think it's AJ Dillon that gets the boost. I think it's Dobbs, because he's the wide receiver 1 on that team. So it just means more targets coming his way.
Yeah, and I mean that is the case. Jones did say that he was potentially going to be able to come back and could have played more if he needed to, but clearly they had that game in hand, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah, if they decide that he is going to sit out some more, that does make a lot of sense. Him and Musgrave actually did a pretty good job for his opening game, I guess. So the next name I'm sure is on everybody's list, because why not? It's Puka Nacua. Dude shocked everybody, man. I had everybody kept talking about it, and I was just like, until I actually see it, there is no way I'm believing this 5th round guy is going to come in and just dominate targets. And sure enough, he did. Granted, I had no hope in Van Jefferson. I really thought the targets were going to go to Higbee, but it was impressive. I mean, he clearly carved out a role for himself, and even with cutback, I do think that he will probably have some sort of role. I still think the wide receiver 3 on the team, behind Jefferson and Tutu, but man, that was just a weird coincidence there. The fact that he just came in and absolutely just Stafford honed in on him. He's like, "You're my guy."
Yeah, and I mentioned this in the Discord and just saying, like, there's a chance that he's just like, he's good. He's a good player. Again, we heard it, the drum beat for him all offseason after the draft and the preseason, and 15 targets it wasn't like a fluke, like, oh, he had 4 catches and 100 yards. This guy had 10 catches, 15 targets, like, and we've seen what Stafford does when he likes someone, he hyper targets them. And so I think Puka, depending on your team build, is right up there with like a Gainwell and Algier is like my top waiver wire ad for sure.
Yeah, especially for a wide receiver. I mean, granted, I am still going to go Dobbs, but that's just me. I absolutely just am fascinated by him in general.
To me, Puka feels like the Sammy Watson paradox of week 1 just absolutely going off.
Watkins one big game.
Yeah, the week 1 just domination, and then you never hear from him the rest of the season. That's what I would be scared about. If you want to buy into the 1 week looking good, go for it, but not for like a massive amount of your fab. I definitely would not be comfortable with that.
No, but Dobbs I would be. I'm again, if you're looking at fab, I'm probably willing to spend up to 40% of my fab on Dobbs. If you're wide receiver needy, I just think that he is going to be a consistent guy for you. It isn't going to be the big weeks like you see with Watson. That's not going to be how it goes. This 2 touchdown week is definitely going to probably be a fluke more often than not, but I'm super impressed with the player overall. All right. Again, Angels is back. What's up, man? Drop MVS for Atwell Dobbs. I'm assuming that's Nacua. Bourne or Zay Flowers.
Flowers for me.
Again, I'm going to just touch on it because Andrews was out, and I do think that did affect it a little bit, but Flowers does look just straight up amazing. I still wish he was a Charger, man, but of them, I'm still going to go Dobbs here. Again, I think he's going to be more consistent, and I think that he is going to be the target leader for the Packers, outside of Jones, of course.
Yeah, I like Flowers. I liked how they used him. They're using him everywhere. He was in there on 2 wide receiver sets. It was him and Beckham. So Bateman was off the field. They gave him 2 carries, and I would talk about carries a lot, and probably mention it with another guy later on this list. Like, it's valuable stuff if you can get even just a couple carries a game. That can equate to an extra like 200, 300 yards total in rushing at the end of the year. So, I like Flowers. I'd probably go Flowers. Dobbs and Nakua are definitely in the top 3, and then it's Atwell, Bourne. So,
yeah, and he mentions it here, Bourne. So that's the next guy I'm looking at, 1.5% rostered. He gets the Dolphins, who was just torched by pretty much every wide receiver that they saw this week. Granted, that was the Chargers offense, so worked out well for them. But he also looked like the wide receiver 1 for the team, and it wasn't necessarily close. I was definitely one of the people who thought it would be Juju. So Bourne really coming in and being that guy for Mac Jones, super impressive. He saw 21.5% of the targets, and that's just impressive for me. I mean, he also scored 2 touchdowns. Again, that seems to be a theme with the players that we're looking at this week is, hey, you scored 2 touchdowns. We should probably put you in or go for over 100 yards. Yeah, let's do that. But he went 6 for 11 for 64 yards and the 2 touchdowns. Like, that's just, I don't think that's going to change. And it was a decent matchup for him. I mean, it was a tough game. So,
yeah, and we've seen Kendrick Bourne be successful in the past with the Patriots. So, I think it's a good call. I don't know what's going on with Juju. I don't think he really played much in the second half. Like, he had 50, I think it was like a 50% snap percentage. I don't know if he's just the 3rd on the depth chart, if he's dealing with an injury or what. But it was like Kendrick Bourne out there and making plays. So he's definitely a solid add. I would, the other 2 I would put over him, but in deeper leagues, or if you don't get one of the other 2, I would definitely target Bourne.
Well, you already kind of talked about who you're targeting, so keep going. Give me some more names that you want to have people have on their mind.
Yeah, Tutu Atwell is the forgotten guy because of Nakua, but he had just as many yards as Nakua. Obviously, less targets. He's more of a deeper play, more of that deeper threat for this team. And Atwell, like, he was high second round draft pick. Like, he has the potential. Obviously, he just hasn't shown it. Now he gets the opportunity and had the best game of his career. His yards per route run basically since last year is almost at 2. It's at 1.96. And this is 21st best in the league since last year. And everyone ahead of him is basically fantasy relevant guys. Like, these are fantasy guys. Yards per route run is a pretty good correlation to fantasy production. So Tutu Atwell, maybe if you miss out on Nakua, is a solid one.
Yeah, the fact that they both got 119 yards, just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Zay Jones, like we mentioned it last year, he was a waiver wire darling last year. Like, he was a 26th wide receiver, 26 last year. He was wide receiver 17 week 1 of this year. He's out. He's in there with Calvin Ridley on 2 wide receiver sets, and Christian Kirk is kind of the afterthought now. And he has Ridley to kind of take that pressure off of him. So I just think, if we expect this Jags offense to take a step and Lawrence to take a step, then Zay Jones might be a beneficiary of that. So it's just another guy to keep on keeping your mind for sure.
Well, yeah, and Kirk was actually the wide receiver 3, which is super crazy. The fact that he's coming in that point. So that's how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, that is pretty alarming. And then Josh Reynolds, we saw him on Thursday, so it's easy to forget. Good old Josh Reynolds, but he's had a couple stretches with the Lions now. When he first got traded there in 2021, he had a good stretch where he was a top 20 receiver, and then last year to start the year he was a top 20 receiver, and then he got hurt, and then you just saw what he did. I mean, nothing crazy, but 4 catches, 80 yards. Like, he could just be a solid play because this team's going to throw a lot. They're going to be a good offense. And you have Amon-Ra St. Brown and who? While Jamison Williams is out, it's like, who's the second guy? Is it Gibbs? Is it Laporta? Probably is Josh Reynolds, to be honest. There's a connection with him and Goff. So I like Josh Reynolds as well. And then Rashid Shaheed, and this is more for deeper leagues.
That home run ball, man. This is the guy for the home run ball for sure.
Yeah, and Derek Carr is a pretty good deep ball passer. He was last year with Adams. Last year, Shaheed was a top 30 receiver over the last 7 weeks. He was wide receiver 11 this week. He is more of that deep receiver. They're a little harder to kind of predict when they're going to go off. But they were also just trying to get the ball in his hands. They threw him a behind the line of scrimmage pass. They gave him 2 carries. Again, I talk about carries a lot, but super valuable because if you're getting 2 carries a game, that can equate to, again, 250, 300 yards. So it's like in the receiving game, it's like if you get to 700 and you get 300 yards rushing, it's like, oh, you're a 1,000-yard player. And, we talk about 1,000-yard receivers. Well, if you're getting 2 carries a game, you could definitely boost your yardage total with that. So that's more of a deeper league stash. So lots of guys out there if you don't get one of the top couple.
All right. M. Gonzalez comes in last minute here for wide receiver before we wrap it up. Full PPR. What's the better pickup, Puka, Dobbs, or Bourne? For me, it's Dobbs.
I am a Puka guy, man. I'm going to
get you a necklace, man.
Right. I think he's good. I really do. But I'm not going to argue. I like Dobbs too. And again, there could be more long-term, full season value with Dobbs. Like who knows what it could when Kupp, if he comes back. Hopefully he does, but he should come back. And Kupp's obviously the alpha in this offense. So I'm not going to argue against Dobbs, but I think I'd lean Puka. As crazy as it sounds.
Bourne just clear third. Just want to establish that clearly third.
Well, I think that's again the fact that we don't really trust the Patriots offense yet. So again, this is why this is a year-long game. You have to make sure that you're following all the trends that possibly could show up because it could just absolutely be a 1 week flash in the pan and then you're done. So thankfully, that's why we're around. But wrapped up wide receiver. Let's move into tight end because I have to pound the table for my guy, Jake Ferguson. He played 71.9% of the Cowboys snaps. Led the team in targets with 6, including all 4 red zone targets. This is the big pounding the table point for me because, man, if he would have caught just one of them, it would have at least made his day somewhat viable. But he went 2 for 6. All the 2 catches were on the first drive. So it immediately, the first pass that Dak threw was to Ferguson. I don't think that's going to change. And then the game just got out of hand clearly as the Giants I decided to give up. But 2 for 6 for 11 yards. There's so much potential here that if they actually have a competitive game, I think Ferguson is going to be very leaned on, and he's only 7% rostered.
Yeah. No, I like that. And it was a little disappointing, because the game got so out of hand, the defense just destroyed. We didn't get to really see all right, let's see Brandon Cooks in this offense. Let's see Ferguson in this offense. They just didn't have to do anything. I think Dak threw for 130 yards or something. It was just and it wasn't because he was bad. It was just, they didn't have to do anything because this defense just absolutely swallowed and swarmed the Giants. So yeah, I still like Ferguson for sure.
Next one is actually somebody you brought up and Neil brought up, and it's Hayden Hurst, 4.8% rostered. You guys absolutely nailed it. The rookie quarterback led this team in targets with 7, had 5 receptions, and had 41 yards, all leading his team. So granted, not the greatest thing, but he was targeted on 25.9% of routes. That's a 24.1% target share for the entire team. And he's a rookie, or it's for a rookie quarterback, which is just what you want. Brand new on the team, worked out great for him. This is what I like to call the rookie lean because it works out so great for rookies to have that tight end that's just wide open for him that will come back and really save their biscuit. So
yeah, and who are you worried about on this Panthers passing offense in the receiving room? It's just no one is the answer. You're not worried about anyone. So actually,
at this point, it might be Shark. We have to wait and see if he actually ends up being the guy. But wow, it was not ideal. Even Thielen being banged up did nothing. I think Marshall was the one who led everybody in
targets and catches. I think,
Oof.
Yeah, it was for receivers.
Yeah.
And just to plug like the 32 teams, obviously, the season started, but this guy we mentioned as a solid tight end late round, and then the next guy that you're going to mention, and they were tight ends 1 and 2 on the week this year, unless Kincaid or Knox or Conklin go off or something, but tight ends 1 and 2 this week. So
yeah, and the next guy, as he alluded to, Hunter Henry, 4 points, 1% rostered. Doesn't matter who else they bring in at this point. Henry has clearly separated himself in the tight end room and really as a target for Jones. Like second in snaps, ran route on 42 of them, and he saw 6 targets, 5 for 6, 56 yards, and he scored a touchdown. Perfect example of what you're looking for at a tight end, and hard not to just appreciate him. Granted, he was a Charger, so we have some salt in our mouth when it comes to that, but it's completely fine. Right, Mike?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's just crazy that like Hunter Henry is going undrafted. Like he was a top 12 tight end for like 3 straight years. And you look at his numbers last year, they weren't even that far off from his consistently top 12, 10 tight end finishes. It was just the whole Patriots offense was kind of a pretty bad, So if this Patriots offense is improved, they have a real offensive coordinator. Yeah, Mac Jones and Hunter Henry, they definitely have a connection. So solid start.
We do have a specific request in the chat from Mike. So in PPR, would you drop either Perrine or Warren for Dobbs?
Oof. I'd probably drop Warren, I think, for Dobbs. Yeah.
Thank you. I was actually going to bring this up because I knew this question had been asked, and I was like, I have to know what Mike thinks here because that's exactly how I felt. Was Warren, of those two, I'm willing to drop Warren for him. Don't love it, but Perrine had a role.
Yeah, he's going to have value without a Javonte injury. I think Warren, he could. It sucks that we saw the Steelers offense play the Niners, like I said, but I think Warren's more of a if Najee gets hurt type of play. Whereas, Perrine's going to have a role there in that Broncos offense.
Okay, we covered my tight ends. Who are your tight ends, Mike?
Chig Okonkwo from the Titans is under just under 50%. He probably will get dropped as well just because he put up a goose egg.
I know. I saw Fantasy Gazette do the what's the Toy Story Buzz Lightyear thing where he's in the box and he's going with all the other toys. I'm like, that's really sad. Just throwing him back out there. Okay.
Yeah. But he was out there, more than he was last year. He didn't have a lot of opportunities last year, and he made the most of it. He's just a talented player. Tannehill was awful yesterday, like absolutely awful. He missed him on, I think Chig was like wide open on a pretty deep pass, and Tannehill just missed him, so overthrown. So I still like Chig a lot, so just keep an eye on that. And then Sam Laporta, we saw him again on Thursday. Easy to forget, but he had 5 catches. And that's all you need to be a top 8 tight end because he was tight end 8, 5 catches for 50 yards or something. So again, we talked about it with Reynolds, like who's the number 2 target for this Lions offense? It should pass the ball a lot and just should be a good overall offense. And it could be Sam Laporta, it could be Gibbs, it could be Reynolds, but so Laporta, it'll be interesting this year, just the whole rookie tight end narrative. If that kind of gets slowly put away, like I've been playing fantasy long enough where I remember rookie receivers were never anything in fantasy football, and now that's all we want. So maybe we go the way towards rookie tight end, start to become something. Who knows?
Which is why everybody wants to go see Kincaid. I'm curious to see how that ends up going tonight, but he has Knox there, and that just makes me so nervous to even thinking about starting him.
Yeah. Here's one for you.
What
about Durham Smythe? Played every snap for Miami, had 7 targets. 3 for 44.
He's out. That's the thing. Like the path to success for tight ends is, are you running routes? And I think he ran 90% of like the routes. Like he was out there on every snap, like you said, and he's running routes. So and on this explosive offense, that's just gonna throw the ball at a crazy amount.
And he's rostered in less than 1% of sleeper leagues. So
yeah,
yikes.
Maybe yeah, maybe he makes the show next week.
Yeah, I want to see it again because Smythe has gotten me before. I've been Smythed. But that it was also Chargers really couldn't stop anything. Except for the run. Kind of. I still don't know if that was just game script or what, because 70 yards of rushing offense. But it's because they could pass on us, and that was just rough to watch.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But Tua might be setting some records this year in terms of passing yard. Like I could see it happen. Again, 1 week, but man, that offense, like how do you stop Tyreek Hill? He's just literally unstoppable.
I mean, there were ways, but I saw how easily I really think that it's just they scheme so well for him. Like they know exactly what to do to confuse defenses and get him open. It's tough.
Yeah.
But so we'll move off of tight ends because nobody cares into something else that nobody cares about, and that's defenses.
Well, hold on. I actually did have one more.
Just
pure curiosity.
Yes, God?
Getting your guys' take here. Adam Trotman.
Oh, with Dulcich
getting hurt. They traded Albert O. He's in the Sean Payton system, and he had 5 targets, which was tied for second on the team, playing basically half the game.
Yeah, man.
I've been you've been Durham Smythe or Smythe before.
He's been Smythe. You've been Trotman.
Yeah, or Trouted or whatever you want to call it. Like
it's fair. Yeah, I'm just looking for. I mean, you're looking for streamers at tight end, right?
Yeah.
So these are guys who are getting volume and played a lot in week 1. Was it a blip on the radar? Maybe, but it's guys that are widely available.
On the same note, though, the thing I want to bring up is just because a tight end is bad, if you drafted them early, doesn't mean that they're going to be bad all year. My example being, I played Dallas Goedert because, it seemed like a good idea. Dude had shown a lot that he was a good player. I'm not going to drop him, but I am going to be a little more hesitant to play him. Granted,
in his defense, he scored as many points as Kelsey and Andrews this week.
Yes. So also don't drop them. Please don't drop Kelsey or Andrews. Which I don't think anybody was, but
please do so I can pick him up.
Mike's over here already sniping people. But yeah, just gotta get that PSA out there. Speaking of PSA, hey, if you haven't already, join our Discord. Like, we're a bunch of fun. You see how much fun we're having. We do this all week, especially because I'm just fully pumping stuff into there constantly for no reason. But it's a good time. Mike is really great with trades. Biz, should I drop? See, that's what we're talking about. Should I drop Okonkwo?
Depends for who. I mean, if we're talking about like for Ferguson or Hurst or Henry, I probably would. I mean, but then again, Okonkwo could be, he could have a big week. It's tight end, so it's like any of these guys can have big weeks or forecast. I think who was it? Oh, Freiermuth was like a top 10 tight end this week. He had 1 catch for 3 yards and a touchdown. He was a top 10 tight end. So like
those touchdowns, man.
Much. So yeah, it just depends on who. Biz, like it depends on which tight end you're swapping them out. But if you want to do it for Ferguson or like a Henry, I'm fine with that.
My only worry is we kind of touched on it earlier, but man, Tannehill did not look good.
No,
that was the big thing for me. Is like he looked rough, which is good for us. I am so excited for the Chargers to have a bounce back week here because we need it already. Week 2,
or it's a huge disappointment.
Sorry. Okay, well, stop talking about tight end. We'll get into defenses because of the teams that I should have known better. The team that I was actually really enjoyed was the Colts. They're only 9.9% rostered. So yes, under 1% rostered. Team played very well against the Jaguars, who are very, very offensive, explosive team. Granted, they did have a interception and scored a touchdown. They also had 2 sacks. So pretty impressive. And again, guess what? They get to play the Texans. I think I'm going to roll out the Colts this week. So, but that's my pick. Do you have somebody you want to talk about?
Yeah, I like that Texans matchup. Any Texans or Cardinals matchup. I think the Cardinals are playing the Giants, so that's why I threw the Giants. Yeah, well, I actually threw the Giants on here, so because they're playing the Cardinals. I know they look terrible. I don't know if I was looking at the scoring. I don't know if ESPN still does, like, I haven't played on ESPN in a while. If they still do if an interception return for a touchdown does it count towards the defense. I always hated that. Like, it's not the defense's fault. That's the offense throwing a pick six. I don't know if
it actually doesn't. They changed that this year. So it was thankfully I was very happy to see that just scoring. I'm like, man, that's some nonsense.
Yeah, but even then, like, the offense put that defense in a terrible position all game. So I actually think their defense is better, definitely better than what we saw. And they play the Cardinals. Like, they just the Cardinals just gave up 11 fantasy points to the Commander, 12 to the Commanders in week 1, and they're starting Josh Dobbs, and so yeah, I like the Giants. Or Buccaneers is another one. They actually scored 8 points against the Vikings, who's supposed to be a pretty good offense. They have players on that defense. I mentioned it in their 32 for 32. I think this team's better than what we're giving credit for. And, they still have players on that defense, and they play the Bears in week 2, and the Bears gave up 14 points to the Packers. So both those defenses I like, and the Colts against the Texans.
Yeah. And speaking of Texans, like, another defense that was very surprising in week 1. I was super impressed with how they played. And I do think that they've brought in somebody who is going to mix that defense up and make it a little tougher on teams that are planning to go up against them. I mean, they were, let's see, the defense 16 this week. And
yeah,
so not super impressive, but put up 9 or 8 fantasy points. Could do worse. So it'll be interesting.
I know it's a homer pick for you guys, but I mean,
you're going to say the Chargers?
The Chargers are only 2% rostered in ESPN leagues. So
nope. I watched them play, man. I'm not going to.
Yeah, but Tannehill loves to throw to the wrong team. So I feel like that's got to be a decent pickup, right? I mean,
I just don't want to. Maybe I'm being biased, but I don't want to. Just seeing them.
I know it's real tough for you guys. It's real tough. I get it. I understand.
Especially because they historically, the last however many years, probably since like 2006, they've been terrible against the run, and Derrick Henry could just absolutely feast on them. So I know the Dolphins didn't do much in the run game, but that was more by choice, I think, than the Chargers doing something. So.
Yeah, Colin Cowherd went on a tangent today and just absolutely torched the Chargers, saying, which, all right, the defense has been better in any category. Hasn't been over, I think it was the 26th best in any of the categories. And that's rough when it comes to defense. But Tannehill did look rough. If you're willing to roll some dice and be a betting man, go for it.
Yeah. All right, how about this one then? The new and improved Detroit Football Lions. They got Seattle this week, followed by Atlanta, and then Green Bay and Carolina. I mean, it's a pretty favorable schedule, and they looked real good against Kansas City, in Kansas City.
Well, it really depends on if they take over what oh my gosh. I want to say McVay did with, I mean, he put out a perfect game plan. The cover 4 and cover 6 was a genius idea on how to really play. I can't even think of who they were playing. Why is my brain fried today?
Kansas City.
Seahawks and Kansas
City. Seahawks. I was focusing
you're thinking
on the
of Seahawks. You're talking about the Rams playing the Seahawks.
Yes. Sorry. That's where I was going with it, because the cover 4 and cover 6 worked out great, clearly. They kept everything close. They didn't let any big plays, and I think that just destroyed Gino's mind.
And one last thing to add on that is I think both their tackles got hurt, the Seahawks. Both their tackles got hurt in week 1. I don't know if they're going to be out. Yeah. So Lions are good, especially you mentioned you can start them. I always like finding those defenses you can get multiple weeks out of. So, yeah, Seahawks, Falcons, Packers, Panthers. and then Bucks. I mean, that's pretty good 5-week stretch there for team defense.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap us up because, man, we spent way too much time talking, but it is week 1. Hard not to. A lot of stuff to cover, a lot of stuff we want to get into your guys' mind, into your think space. But let's go watch this game. Mike, you have any parting words for the people?
No, good luck for everyone. Has the matchup is dependent on tonight's game, so hopefully things work out for you. And yeah, we'll be back soon.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying. I'm so nervous about tonight's game. This game is usually always ugly. I'd be curious to see if it switches, if it's going to be very defensive or is it actually just going to blow up and everything's going to be offensive.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a low-scoring one, like a 20-17 type of game.
Yeah. I mean, it could be 40-0. No. Sorry. I just had to take the giant joke there. My bad. But anyway, we're going to get out of here. Thank you all for joining us. And remember, as always, to keep up the nonsense.